and everybody was here last week. So let's go to Genesis 14:19. Right in the middle of the page.
And he blessed him and said, Blessed be Abram of Most High, God, possessor of heaven and earth.
Okay, God, the possessor of heaven and earth. Okay, it all belongs to him. Daniel 4:34 and 35.
And at the end of the days, I, Nebuchadnezzar, lifted up my eyes unto heaven, and mine understanding returned unto me. And I blessed the Most High, and I praised and honored him that liveth forever, those domain in an everlasting dominion, and his kingdom is from generation to generation. And all that inhabits of the earth are reputed as nothing, and he doeth according to his will in my army of heaven and among the inhabitants of the earth. And none can stay his hand or say unto him, What doest thou?
Okay. I, Nebuchadnezzar. Do you know who Nebuchadnezzar was?
Yes.
Babylonian king.
He was the grass-eating
Babylonian
king.
king.
Huh?
He was the grass-eating king.
He was a Babylonian king that grazed for 7 years because he was impertinent toward God. And God protected him for the 7 years, but he lived outside, he lived under a tree, and he ate grass, and got extremely humble. Well, this verse is right after it was over. And this guy was powerful. This guy had a powerful kingdom. And he had a great army. And this is his testimony at the end. I, Nebuchadnezzar, lifted up mine eyes unto heaven, and mine understanding returned to me, and I blessed the Most High. Okay, so all of his gods took second seat, and he honored the Most High God, Jehovah, our God. He liveth forever. His dominion is an everlasting dominion. His kingdom is from generation to generation. And all the inhabitants of the earth are reputed as nothing. He doeth according to his own will in the army of heaven among the inhabitants of the earth, and none can stay his hand or say to him, What doest thou? Okay. God cannot be questioned. Means what Nebuchadnezzar seems to think. None can saith unto him, What doest thou? Does God get upset if we ask a question? He doesn't. But remember in Job, when Job questioned him, and what was God's response to Job?
Where were you when I created the world?
What right do you have to question me? Where were you when I laid the foundations of the universe? Where were you when I hung the stars in the sky? Where were you when I created Orion and created the mammoth? I forget what the word he used for
Behemoth?
behemoth. Where were you when I created the behemoth? Was he mad at Job? No. And he's not mad at us, but sometimes we have to be reminded that we're not God. I had a professor tell me one time that men spend their entire lives trying to create God in their own image. Is that true?
Mm-hmm.
Don't we, have you ever heard jokes about heaven and golf courses in heaven? And those are from people who golf. And every once in a while I'll say, well, I just hope I have a cabin on a trout stream. You know? We tend to want God to be what we want him to be. We tend to want to create him in our image, which is a desperate mistake, because Mankind has not done a whole lot for creation except mess it up. Right? But our God is the dominion over all things. And when we question him, don't we doubt him? Isn't that an act of doubt? To say, why are you doing this to me? Or why did you allow this to happen? Okay, there's some doubt involved in it. And so even though he chastised Job, and even though Nebuchadnezzar, Nebuchadnezzar's responding to what God has done to him. And he's saying, I questioned him. I didn't believe in him totally. I had my other gods. But now Nebuchadnezzar is saying the one and only. Now Nebuchadnezzar, because for 7 years God dealt with him and humbled him. And now Nebuchadnezzar is saying, basically what he's saying is, I shouldn't have questioned him. I shouldn't have questioned his validity. I shouldn't have questioned his power. I shouldn't have questioned who and what he was. I should have honored him. And here he does. Here he does. And, I mean, God could have wiped Nebuchadnezzar off the face of the earth. I mean, look what he did to Pharaoh. In what other ways has God used situations that in creation to bring about his will? Think about the plagues of Egypt. Every one of them was a natural occurrence. He brought locusts on the land. He brought frogs. He turned the water to blood. Okay. He did, only the last act was performed by an angel. All the other plagues that were sent upon Egypt were natural occurrences of God's creation. Controlled by God, but natural occurrences of God's creation. And very often he used that, and here he used Nebuchadnezzar. We talked a couple of weeks ago about how he used Hitler to get the Jews back to the Promised Land and bring sympathy from the whole world, even from the Arab nations. I mean, nobody voted against that act back in 1946. Now they're regretting it, the Arabs are regretting it, but back then, God changed the hearts of the whole world to bring Israel back home. Now, he didn't want Hitler to kill 7 million Jews, but Hitler did it, and God used it. He used water to bring about the flood, to bring about his judgment on the earth. One morning, 120,000 Philistines woke up with a severe case of hemorrhoids and couldn't fight, and they were slaughtered in the camp by 300 men. God has often used nature and creation to reveal himself and to bring about his judgment. Psalms 115:3.
But our God is in heavens, he hath done whatever he hath pleased.
Okay. God is in the heavens, and he does whatever he pleases. What if that was Thor? Would you be at peace with whatever Thor decided to do when he woke up on the wrong side of the bed? We get that lightning thing from the Greek gods, Has somebody ever kind of stepped away from you when you said something and said, I don't want to be too close to you when God strikes you with lightning? Well, it's not our God that strikes people with lightning. Now, he did send fire from heaven on the mountaintop when Elijah was dealing with the 400 prophets of Baal. But it was the Greek gods that threw lightning from heaven and caused chaos whenever they didn't like what was going on. Not our God. Our God is a God of love. And when it says he does what he pleases, it's actually saying he does what's best. He does what will make his relationship with me better. And it pleases him to bless me, to prosper me, to make me an example of his goodness and an example of his love. It pleases him that he can make me a light upon a hill and shine forth through me. He doesn't, it's not pleasure like you would expect out of the Greek or the Roman gods. It's pleasure as you would expect from a loving father who you know, he said, not only does he give me my needs, but also the desires of my heart, if I can handle it. Now, giving me some things would probably distract me from the goal. Can you think of something that if he let you have it, it would distract you from the goal? I don't need a list. Give me a list. I don't need to know. Unless you need to pray about it. I don't need to know. Revelation 1:8.
I am Alpha, Omega, the beginning and the ending, saith the Lord, which is, and which was, and which is to come, the Almighty.
Okay. What's that mean?
Means he's it.
Hmm?
He's it.
He's
He's
it.
all.
He's everything.
You know, remember back in Exodus it said, I am the I am? What's that mean? What does that really mean? It means that he's already been to the Valley of Armageddon and the battle is won. We haven't gotten there yet. History hasn't gotten there yet. Time hasn't gotten there yet. But God's already been there. He's already seen the battle. He's already seen the blood washing down the valley, neck deep on the reins of the horses. He's already seen the victory of his son descending from heaven. He's already seen the carcasses, and he's already preparing for it. It says that the birds of prey and the birds of carrion will feast upon the flesh of kings and princes. Remember that verse? Will feast upon the flesh of kings and princes. You know, some of you weren't here when we went through Revelation, but there's an amazing thing going on in nature right now. Usually the buzzards and the vultures and the condors and all the birds of carrion replace a chick about every 2 years. They usually lay 3 to 4 eggs, and they're lucky if one of them survives. They have a pretty lousy diet. You know, they bring in all the rotten meat and then they throw it up in the nest, and the youngsters eat it.
You want to eat now?
That sausage is good. Not great for breakfast, right? But most of the chicks don't survive, and a pair of buzzards will only replace themselves about every 2 or 3 years. But right now, worldwide, all the birds of carrion are having great success in producing chicks. And they're producing 1 to 2 chicks, and the populations are exploding.
We had 5 in our driveway.
5 in your driveway?
5 in our driveway. We went in I think it was last Sunday, came in from church, pulled in the driveway, and there were 5 just sitting there. And he had to get out to get them to get out of the driveway. They weren't afraid of the car or anything. I was going to, Steve's like, run him over. I'm like, I'm not damaging my car.
Okay, Logan, you need to move a little more because you're liable to get the wrong idea. 5 in one place, 5 in one driveway.
So why are chicks multiplying?
What?
Why are the chicks multiplying?
Why are they multiplying? Because there's going to be a great war at the end of Revelation, and they're going to have a big job to do. They're going to be cleaning up that mess in the Valley of Armageddon. And it says it also in Ezekiel, and it says it also in Jeremiah. It talks about the birds of prey that will come and feast off the flesh of kings and princes. Well, we're seeing it happen all around us. And God is going to use them. He's going to use his own creation to do what needs to be done on that day. Okay. So, when it says he's the beginning and the end, the Alpha and the Omega, not only has he prophesied about the valley of Armageddon, but it will meticulously come out because he has already been there. He is the present tense. There is no, for us, it's in the future, but for God, it's already happened because it's been ordained. He's already established it. Psalms 22:28.
For the kingdom is the Lord's, and he is the governor among the nations.
Ah. Does it seem like God is the Lord of our nation?
Not when you turn the TV on first thing in the morning.
No. No. Where does all authority come from? God. Hitler's authority came from God. He abused it, and he paid for it. Okay? But his authority came from God. All authority comes from God. All power comes from God. Everything. And when we are, and sometimes when we look at a situation, we say, that's of the devil. No, it isn't. The authority and the power given to that person comes from God. They abused it. They abused it. And God will make it right in the end. He will make it right in the end. Our country is involved in a lot of desperate, dastardly things. We have aborted 60 million plus babies within our borders. 60 million babies have been aborted. And there is only one thing that I can find in the Bible that is protecting us from God's wrath in this country. Do you know what that is?
That we support Israel?
Hmm?
Is it that we support Israel?
His promise to Abraham that those people that support Israel will be blessed, and that those people who don't support Israel will be cursed. That is the only thing. And if we ever turn our back on Israel, there is nothing standing between us and the wrath of God. That promise to Abraham is the only thing that's keeping this country alive today. Because we have abused just about, there's two places in the Old Testament where the people were eating their dead children and the nation was starving, and they cried out to God and said, why have you done this to us? And do you know what his response was in those two situations? His response was, because you have killed my children while they were in the wombs of their mothers, I am doing this to you. Where does that leave us? All right. God is a governor among all the nations. I don't care who, who's the guy in Russia? I don't care who Putin thinks he is. When he enters into the Valley of Armageddon with his great army, he's going to be brought to nothing. I don't care who the Arabs think they are. When they enter into the Valley of Armageddon, they are going to be brought to nothing. And the vultures are going to feast on their flesh. It has already been seen, it has already been ordained, in God's eyes it's already happened, and we probably will see it in our life. Okay. Romans 9:20.
Nay, but, O man, who art thou that repliest against God? Shall the thing formed say to him that formed it, why hast thou made me thus?
Okay. What's it saying there? Nay, O man, thou art, who art thou who repliest against God? Give me some examples of how that could be. How do we reply against God?
We question him.
Hmm?
When we question.
Hypothetical, you don't have to get personal, just hypothetical. How do we reply against God?
Anytime something comes up, we think we got it figured out and we go ahead, we don't consult him, we don't pray about it. Anytime we got a problem, we don't know what to do, we don't consult him, we don't pray about it. Anytime any situation in life that comes up that we think we're certain or we know we are uncertain, and we don't go to God about it, that's when we go, that's that right there. We do not reply to him.
We're challenging our God with our own strength and with our own will.
Is it also when you know it's a sin, but you do it anyways because you want to do it?
It absolutely does. I know I'm about to do something wrong, and I do it anyway. The Holy Spirit is saying, no, don't do that. You know you're not supposed to do that. You know this is not going to end well.
I'll do it today, I'll ask for forgiveness tomorrow. And hope I don't die tonight.
Yeah. Yeah. We do that all the time. Do that all the time.
And we push our boundaries too, like, well, I know I can't do this, but I'll kind of just do a little bit, but not the whole thing. And I know I shouldn't watch this movie, but I really want to, so I'll just watch a little bit of it, and then I'll shut it off in 5 minutes.
I just walk down the highway with one foot on either
Push
side of the center line. You know, maybe I won't get hit. Yeah, no. When we justify our actions, when we do it anyway, and then somebody comes to you and says, "Did you really do that?" You say, "Yeah, but." There are no buts. There are no buts. I did it. I knew it was wrong, and I need to repent. But we argue with God. Not smart. Nebuchadnezzar found that out. Okay, God's will is rational. Why is that important?
Well, we wouldn't want to be devoting our lives to someone who is irrational.
No. Have you ever known anybody that was irrational and just did stupid stuff all the time?
That would be me.
How much fun were they to be around?
Well,
Come on. Come on.
I mean, think about it. Do you want to put your future and have you ever had a boss that just never seemed to have a rational decision?
Yes.
Never had one. I had a boss that was a clerk one time, and she was trying to be a carrier supervisor and didn't know anything about carrying. So the post office, in its great wisdom, decided that they wanted to save gasoline. And so they had all the supervisors go out and make sure that the carriers were not stopping too often. You're supposed to put 35 pounds in your bag. You're supposed to, you're not supposed to put 10 pounds in your bag and stop 10 times. You're supposed to put 35 pounds in your bag and move your vehicle instead of 10 times, 4 times. Okay, save gasoline. So she comes out, and I had this place called Golden Hills, and all the millionaires in Indianapolis lived there. And they had these big U-shaped driveways that went back to these mansions that were way back off the road. And I'd pull up to the front door, the butler would come out and get the mail, and I didn't even get out of the vehicle. So I'm driving through there, and I could do Golden Hills in about 35, 40 minutes. And a lot of mail, I mean, they got all kinds of So this supervisor, this clerk supervisor, she goes out with me and says, "Why are you driving your vehicle to all these houses? Get out and walk." I said, "I could only get 1 or 2 in my bag at a time. Look at these bundles of mail." She said, "We have to save gas." Okay, you're the boss. I went out and I went out, and before I went out, I said, "I'm not gonna be able to get done in 8 hours today." She said, "Well, you always get done in 8 hours. This isn't gonna make any difference." I said, "Do you think I can walk faster than I can drive?" Said, "Do it the way I told you to." I said, "Okay." 3:30 came around, I was half done with my route. I drove back in, put all the mail on her desk and said, "I have to go home. You're gonna have somebody else finish my route." "What happened?" I said, "I can't walk faster than I can drive." So I went home, and the next day she came in and said, "Don't you ever do that to me again." I said, "Listen, I will do it as quick as I possibly can, your way, but if I need overtime, you're either gonna have to pay it or I'm going home." I said, "If you want me to do it this way again, I need overtime." Well, I got an hour and a half's overtime that day. Now, an hour and a half's overtime, 18 times 1.5 is how much money, and I saved how much gas? I saved a quarter's worth of gas, and it cost him $27 for me to carry my route extra. Well, that went on for a couple of weeks, and she just stuck to her guns. She was not going to do it. And a couple of days she come out and walk with me, and I outwalked her. I mean, she was kind of a heavy-set lady, and I weighed 145 pounds, long legs, and she couldn't keep up. And I still used an hour and a half's overtime. She still wouldn't get it. Well, they came out and inspected my route from downtown, and the guy came in and looked at her, and he said, "Have you lost your mind?" And from then on, I drove my route and drove up to the doors and finished my route in 8 hours. It's not fun being around people who are irrational and don't know what they're doing and won't admit it. It's not fun. And there's a lot of tension in those 3 weeks that we were in that. And finally, they made her a delivery supervisor in somebody else's office, and I didn't have to deal with it anymore. But it wasn't fun. It was not fun. And if our God was something ominous like the gods in the Pacific, where they threw their children in the volcanoes in order to save the village, life would be horrible. Okay, Ephesians 1:8-11.
Wherein he hath abounded toward us in all wisdom and prudence, having made known unto us the mystery of his will, according to his good pleasure, which he hath purposed in himself, that in the dispensation of the fullness of times he might gather together in one all things in Christ, both which are in heaven and which are on earth, even in him, in whom also we have obtained an inheritance, being predestinated according to the purpose of him who worketh all things after the counsel of his own will.
Big scripture. There's 5 sermons in there.
At least.
Hmm?
At least 5.
There's 5 sermons in there. What's the goal? Wherein he abounded what? What's the goal? Wherein he abounded toward us. His actions are about us. His sovereignty is about blessing his creation. He loves you. He gave everything for you and for me. Every action he makes is for my goodwill toward us in all wisdom and prudence. Okay? What's that say about these actions?
I try to remind myself when I'm questioning why this is happening or fretting what's going to happen, And I have to remember, it's like mothers can understand this, when you have a little baby and you're feeding that baby and caring for that baby looks up at you and adores you. But then there's the day when you've got to take them into the doctor's office and hold them down while somebody sticks them with a needle. And they look at you like, how did you let this happen? Well, it was for their good. And if you didn't do it, there was a whole lot of hurt coming. So I just have to think about that when I feel, like, why did you let this happen? What could possibly come good of this? And that's, to me, that's his sovereign will, that's his prudence.
Okay, let's define, exactly right, good example. Let's define wisdom.
Should we Google it?
Hmm?
I said, should we Google it?
I don't need to.
I always like to think of it as wisdom is knowledge in action.
Huh?
Wisdom is knowledge in action.
Okay.
You know, but not necessarily. I mean, you can have bad knowledge and you can put it into action. It's not wisdom, it's stupidity.
Let me add one word to that. Wisdom is the proper use of knowledge.
Amen.
A lot of people have knowledge and they use it wrong. But you're exactly right. It is knowledge in action properly. It is the knowledge that I have. I can take the Bible and I can say, an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth, and I can shoot you. That's not knowledge used properly. Okay. So it's the knowledge you have used properly. That's wisdom. That's wisdom. And when you take your knowledge and put it into action properly. Okay? And prudence. What's prudence?
It's controlled, controlled behavior, or something that's, yeah. So I'll just leave it at that, controlled behavior. So God does his things with the wisdom that he has, but he also has the constraint and the purpose of time.
And we are very fortunate that our God is a very patient God. Okay? Prudence activates his patience because he knows at some point that I'm going to repent. Now I'm sure there's sometimes he looks at me and says, well, let's just smack him off the face of the earth. There may be those days, but God's patience and his love causes him to be prudent. Go ahead, Linda.
There's a verse that describes that perfectly, Romans chapter 9 where we're in. He says, what if God, willing to show his wrath and to make his power known, endured with much long suffering the vessels of wrath fitted to destruction, that he might make known the riches of his glory on the vessels of mercy. So, I mean, he's doing this one thing over here, but really what he's doing is he's demonstrating the fact that his mercy is really undeserved anyway.
Remember back in Exodus when God looked at Moses and said, I've had it with these jerks. My paraphrase. I've had it with these jerks. Moses, I'm going to wipe them off the face of the earth and I'll start over with you. Remember what Moses said? Moses said, but how will that make you look? Now, this is a rough paraphrase, okay? But Moses said, will that bring glory to you? Will that make you look good? And then God, in his patience, left the things the way they were. Because he'd already made a covenant with Abraham, didn't do it anyway. And he was just so frustrated, he said, and maybe he was testing Moses too. Okay? There was probably a little bit of that going on. He said, I've had it with these stiff-necked, hard-headed jerks. I will wipe them off the face of the earth and I'll start over with you. And Moses said, you can't do that. That wouldn't be prudent.
Makes you wonder what he done to Moses if Moses said, okay. I'm tired of them too.
Yeah, that would have been an interesting scenario. Okay. Having made known unto us the mystery of his will according to his good pleasure. How is his will a mystery?
Well, we know nothing about him unless he reveals it to us. I mean, the entire scripture is revelation that we had no clue about. And that's why we worship stones and rocks and trees.
That's exactly true.
You know.
Why we worship stone and rocks and trees and monkeys and albino buffaloes and the whole gamut of things. But it's also, remember back in the epistles, it said, the wisdom of man is foolishness to God, and the wisdom of God is foolishness to man. Most of the time, we pollute our understanding of God with our understanding of the world, and it doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense. We have to have faith in God, and we have to allow God to reign. And when we do, now I'm 72 years old next month, and I can look back on a lot of times where I thought God had totally abandoned me, and the truth of the matter is, He was working at His most intense in my life at that moment. And it was only after the storm was over that I could look back and I could see what God was doing. And then I understood. And I didn't even understand completely then. I just know it turned out okay, and that God had to be there, and that and it built trust and faith in me toward Him. Right? But the bottom line is, until we cross across that threshold of heaven, this walk will be a walk of faith. And we have to, in order to completely embrace the fullness of His blessing, we have to trust Him. We have to trust Him without reservation. And then we can walk in peace. But we won't. Because the storms will come and the lightning will flash and we will drift back and doubt for a while, and then God will get us our attention because He loves us. We'll finish that half of that in the next week.